Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That strange pull you have been feeling, that restlessness inside you that does not make sense for someone your age, your position, your level of experience, stop running from it. The enemy is working overtime this week for one reason, and one reason only. He sees the reversal that heaven just authorized. It all shifts in the next 24 hours. The heaviness, the confusion, the embarrassing emotions you thought you had outgrown. But here is what you need to understand before anything else. It is not ending in spite of what you have been feeling. It is ending because of it. Think back to that moment this week when you caught yourself reacting like a younger version of you. Maybe you slammed a door in your spirit. Maybe you went quiet in a room full of people and felt small in a way you have not felt since you were 17. Maybe you cried without knowing why, or picked up an old habit, or found yourself desperately wanting someone to just tell you it is going to be okay. You looked at that moment and called it regression. You called it weakness. You told yourself you were going backward. You did not know it then. But that moment was not a collapse. That was a reset. God blocked everything else competing for your focus today just to get this verdict in front of your eyes. So, anchor your spirit, because I am about to read the decree that rewrites how you see the last 30 days of your life. You did not find this recording by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Holy Spirit did. This is a divine appointment, scheduled before the foundations of the earth were laid. You are not stumbling through a season. You are standing at a threshold. Stay until the very last second of this message. In the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the legal decree that cancels the shame assignment the enemy launched against your identity. I am going to walk you through the moment you thought was your lowest point and show you exactly why it was your greatest act of spiritual obedience. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that seals this reversal and locks the door on the version of you the enemy was counting on you to stay. Do not click away. Your future self is standing on the other side of this message, begging you to listen, because if you leave now, you will walk back into the same room with the same story and miss the verdict that was delivered specifically for you today. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not just been heavy, it has been disorienting. Like you woke up inside a life that fits you perfectly on paper, but feels strange when you try to move around inside it. Maybe you were lying in bed this week, unable to sleep, and for a moment, just a moment, you wished you could go back. Not to a specific place or a specific person, but just back to a time before everything got this complicated. Or maybe you found yourself in the middle of a conversation with someone who respects you, someone who looks up to you, and behind your composed expression, you felt like a fraud. Like the teenager you used to be was still in there somewhere, pressing against the glass, wondering when they got left behind. You feel suspended. Like the adult you built yourself into is standing in one room, and the version of you that still has wounds is standing in another, and neither one knows how to reach the other. And in this suspension, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your thoughts right now. He is telling you that this reversal, this wave of old emotions, this sudden return of fears you thought you conquered, is proof that you never actually healed. He is replaying scenes from your past. That moment you were overlooked. That moment someone made you feel invisible, or stupid, or too much, or not enough. And he is telling you that because those wounds surfaced again, everything you built since then was just performance. That the real you never grew up. That you are still that child, still that teenager, still stuck in that version of yourself that nobody took seriously. He is telling you that the breakthrough was never real. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." Listen to what that actually means. All things. Not the comfortable things, not the polished, mature, put-together things, all things, including the regression, including the night you cried for no reason, including the moment you felt 17 years old inside a grown body carrying grown responsibilities. God does not waste a wound that resurfaces. He weaponizes it. You are not reverting. You are being retrieved. The heaviness you feel is not the shame of going backward. It is the weight of God's hand reaching into the part of you that was left behind and pulling it forward into alignment with the version of you that He always intended to exist. The teenager inside you did not surface to embarrass you. They surfaced because they are finally safe enough to be seen, healed, and released. You did not regress this week. You graduated. That moment you thought was your most embarrassing, your most juvenile, your most humiliating surrender to old emotion, that was not weakness. That was the wound, finally trusting God enough to open, so He could close it properly this time. That was not retreat. That was the final lap. Hit the like button if this message landed exactly where you needed it today. Drop a comment below. What is one moment from this week where you felt yourself reverting? And are you now starting to wonder if that moment was actually the beginning of something new? And if you've been feeling that pull, that strange, disorienting regression into an older version of yourself, what I'm about to share will explain exactly why it's happening, and more importantly, what God is doing inside of it. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And for those called to speak His truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now let's go deeper into what's actually happening to you. There is a specific kind of chosen person who, right at the edge of their greatest breakthrough, begins to feel like they are falling apart. Not just emotionally, not just mentally, but in a way that seems to reach back through time and pull them backward, back into the fears of a younger self, back into patterns they thought they had buried, back into feelings they swore they had outgrown. It feels like a spiritual undertow, pulling you away from the shore of your progress and into the churning depths of your past. And the enemy, that ancient accuser, wants you to believe that this reversal is evidence that you failed, that all your growth was an illusion, a mirage shimmering on the horizon of your progress, that you are not who you thought you were, but merely a fragile facade ready to crumble. But what if that interpretation is the lie, a distortion designed to keep you trapped in fear, and the reversal itself is the miracle, a sacred process orchestrated by divine love? Here is what most people miss entirely. Before a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it does not simply grow wings. Inside the chrysalis, its entire body dissolves into a kind of primordial soup. If you could open that cocoon at the wrong moment, you would not find a butterfly in progress. You would find what looks like destruction, what looks like regression, what looks like a creature losing everything it once was. But within that apparent annihilation, that liquefaction of form, lies the very essence of transformation. Encoded within that dissolving is the complete blueprint of what it is becoming, the divine architecture for its next season. The Chosen One's reversal is not destruction, it is dissolution. And dissolution is how God rebuilds from the original design, from the blueprint etched onto your soul before the foundations of the earth were laid. It is a divine deconstruction, making way for a radical reconstruction. Think about what happened to David. Here was a man anointed by Samuel, chosen by God, carrying an unction that caused him to slay giants and move kingdoms. He was a king, a warrior, a psalmist. And yet, after all of that, after the victories and the accolades, there came a season where David was fleeing through the wilderness, a fugitive from his own kingdom, hiding in caves that echoed with the silence of his isolation, eating bread that belonged to priests in a desperate act of survival, pretending to be insane before a foreign king just to save his life. From the outside, this looked like a man in full regression, his destiny derailed, his anointing extinguished. But from the inside, God was doing something no throne room could have accomplished. He was returning David to himself, peeling back the layers of kingly authority, the weight of responsibility, the applause of the crowd, the polished armor of leadership. He was stripping away the applause, the armor, the titles, until there was nothing left but the shepherd boy who knew how to be alone with God, who found solace in the vastness of the wilderness and communion in the quiet whispers of the divine. And it was in that returned state, not in the palace, that David wrote some of the most spiritually powerful words ever recorded. The cave produced the Psalms. The regression produced the revelation. It was in the stripping away that he found his truest self, his deepest connection. And this is where it goes deeper for you personally. What you are experiencing right now is not a step backward on your timeline, not a cosmic error, not a detour from your intended path. It is God pressing rewind on purpose, a deliberate recalibration, not to replay the old story, not to rehash old wounds, but to locate the exact moment, the precise crossroads in your past, where you made an agreement with something that was never true, an unconscious pact with a lie. Because somewhere in your past, in a moment of profound pain or crushing rejection or disorienting confusion, you accepted a version of yourself that God never authored, a counterfeit identity. You built your entire adult architecture, your life structure, on top of a wound that was never truly healed, only meticulously covered, plastered over with coping mechanisms and survival strategies. And now, at the appointed moment, the very structure of your perceived self is shaking, the foundations are trembling, because the original lie at the root of that wound needs to be exposed and replaced. Not the you that you became, forged in the fires of your pain, but the foundational lie that you built yourself on, the faulty blueprint that has been dictating your reality. But here is the part that most people turn away from, because it is profoundly uncomfortable, often even agonizing. The regression does not feel holy. It does not feel like divine surgery, precise and sterile. It feels like shame, a raw, exposed vulnerability. It feels like failure, the bitter taste of defeat. It feels like standing in the middle of your adult life, a seasoned traveler on your journey, surrounded by responsibilities and expectations, and suddenly being ambushed by the raw, unvarnished emotional reality of a 12-year-old who was never truly seen or heard. A teenager who was told they were too much or not enough, their burgeoning identity constantly needing external validation. A young person who learned to perform, to wear masks, to perfect their act in order to be loved, to earn their place in the world. And the reason it doesn't feel holy is because we have been culturally conditioned to equate maturity with distance from our wounds, to believe that the more we forget or repress our pain, the more evolved we become. But God does not operate that way. He equates wholeness with return to the origin, return to the breach, the place where the armor first cracked, return to the exact place where the enemy planted the first seed of the false self, the subtle whisper of doubt and inadequacy, so that seed can finally be uprooted by the deep, unshakable roots of truth that God is now implanting. Coming up the hidden pattern that keeps chosen people cycling through the same emotional territory for years, never understanding why the same trigger keeps pulling them back, trapping them in a recurring nightmare. Stay with me, because this is the part that breaks the cycle permanently, unlocking a freedom you may have never thought possible. But before we get there, You have to understand the mechanics of what is happening in your body right now, in the very core of your being. When God initiates this kind of spiritual reversal, this profound recalibration, the first thing that gets disrupted is your sense of identity. It's like the ground beneath your feet shifts. You wake up one morning and the confidence that used to feel stable, a solid rock, now feels borrowed, like an ill-fitting garment. The spiritual clarity you had 3 months ago, sharp and unwavering, now feels foggy, obscured by a spiritual mist. The vision you were walking in, once so vibrant and compelling, now feels like it belonged to someone else, a memory of a past life. And here is what most teachers will not tell you, because it defies conventional spiritual understanding. That is not spiritual attack. That is spiritual preparation. God is dismantling a self that was partially constructed by survival instincts, by the need to adapt and endure, not by the pure, unadulterated truth of who you are in Him. He is removing the scaffolding, the temporary supports that kept you functional but kept you false, allowing you to operate in the world without revealing your true, vulnerable core. And the terrifying feeling of not knowing who you are in this moment, this disorientation, this existential questioning, is not a crisis. It is a doorway, a sacred threshold into a more authentic existence. Now this connects directly to that pattern I mentioned, the one that keeps people cycling, running on a hamster wheel of emotional and spiritual frustration. Here it is plainly, stripped bare of any spiritual jargon. Every time a chosen person begins to approach real breakthrough, the cusp of their greatest destiny, they unconsciously recreate the emotional conditions of their original wound, the very trauma that God is now seeking to heal. Not because they want to, not because they are weak or lacking in faith, but because somewhere deep inside, ingrained through years of programming, they believe the lie that they are only safe when they are small, when they are unnoticed, invisible, when they are managing the circumstances instead of leading with divine authority, when they are surviving, just getting by, instead of receiving the abundance that God has ordained for them. It is called a trauma loop, a self-perpetuating cycle of pain and fear. But in spiritual terms, it is a covenant with smallness that was made in a moment of profound pain and never consciously broken. Think of Joseph. His brothers stripped him of his coat of many colors before they threw him into the pit. That coat was the symbol of his distinction, his inheritance, his unique calling, and the enemy has been trying to strip you of yours ever since. Not always through overt external enemies, but far more insidiously, through your own hands. Through the self-sabotage that masquerades as wisdom, the subtle choices that lead you away from your destiny, disguised as prudence. Through the withdrawal that feels like necessary rest, but is actually avoidance of your divine assignment. Through the silence that feels like humility but is actually fear. The deep-seated terror of refusing to be seen and known for who you truly are. And once you see that, once the veil is lifted from this insidious pattern, something else becomes visible, something that transforms your perception of every challenge. The people who appeared in your regression, the relationships that resurfaced from the depths of your past, the conflicts that reignited with unexpected ferocity, the old emotions that came flooding back through encounters you didn't expect. The people who seemed to represent past hurts, those were not random interruptions or divine inconveniences. They were the curriculum. God does not waste a single character in the epic story He is writing for your life. Every person who triggered you in this season, every situation that felt like a painful echo of the past, was holding up a mirror, reflecting back the unhealed places within you. And the question was never whether you would be triggered, for that is inevitable when dealing with old wounds. The question, the real test of your spiritual maturity, was whether you would be willing to look, truly look, at what the trigger was revealing about the original wound that never closed, the festering sore that has been subtly affecting your present. Here is where what's coming next will likely surprise you, because most people, when faced with this kind of internal upheaval, frame the entire experience as a direct attack from an external enemy. And there is an enemy that is absolutely real, a spiritual adversary seeking to thwart God's purposes. But the enemy is not the author of what you are going through. He is only an opportunist, a scavenger. He saw the crack that God was opening in your soul, the space being made for divine intervention, and tried to flood it with condemnation, with shame, with accusations of failure, before you could receive the profound healing that was waiting inside it. The adversary's strategy was not to destroy you in this season, although that is his ultimate aim. It was to make you quit, to cause you to abandon the process before the sacred surgery was finished. Because an anointed person who never fully heals becomes a powerful person who is perpetually dangerous to themselves and ineffective to others, a weapon that can accidentally wound the very kingdom it was meant to advance. And the enemy knows that better than most believers do, understanding the profound implications of an unhealed minister. Stay with me, because what comes next is the part that changes the way you see everything you just heard, transforming confusion into clarity and pain into purpose. Because here is the divine tension at the center of all of this, the paradox that has kept so many perplexed. You have been praying for God to move you forward. You have been declaring your next level with conviction. You have been prophesying your breakthrough with fervent faith. And at the same time, quietly, unconsciously, faithfully, you have been protecting the very wound that your breakthrough would require you to expose. You have been guarding your unhealed places, the tender spots of your past, with the same fierce devotion you give to your calling, your destiny. And God, in His infinite wisdom and boundless patience, has allowed you to do that, to hold on to those defenses, until now, until this season, until this profound reversal. Because He will not let you carry an unhealed wound into the fullness of your assignment, into the weight of your intended purpose. Not because He is punishing you, far from it, but because He knows with perfect clarity what the immense weight of that unhealed wound would cost you once the pressure of your purpose increases, once you are operating at the highest levels of His calling. He is performing this delicate surgery now at the level of inconvenience, at the level of temporary discomfort, so that you do not collapse later, at the level of catastrophe when the stakes are infinitely higher. And here is the final thing, the profound revelation, the piece of the puzzle you probably did not see coming. The reason this reversal feels like going backward into a younger version of yourself, a familiar but uncomfortable space, is because the version of you that God originally designed, the pure, unadulterated essence of your being, never fully got to live. It was interrupted before it could bloom. It was covered over by the circumstances of your environment, by the weight of unmet needs. It was silenced by experiences that had nothing to do with your intrinsic worth and everything to do with the often harsh environment you were placed in. And God is not regressing you. He is recovering you. He is going back to retrieve the version of you that was left behind, the original masterpiece that was never completed, the one with the original fire, the unquenchable passion, the original wonder, the unmarred capacity for awe, the original unfiltered connection to heaven, a direct line to the divine that hadn't yet learned to be afraid, to doubt, to shield itself. That teenager, that child, that younger self you have perhaps been embarrassed by, ashamed of, has been seen by you as your weakness. But it is not your weakness, that is your origin. That is the pure, uncorrupted blueprint of your divine design. And God is restoring your origin, rebuilding your foundations from the bedrock of your authentic self, so that everything you build from this point forward is built on truth, not on survival strategies, not on the shaky ground of past hurts. The reversal is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the version that was always meant to be told, the epic saga of your true identity, fully restored and powerfully unleashed. Place your hand on your heart and declare this with me, with every fiber of your being. I release every agreement I made with smallness in my moments of pain, with survival, with hiding. I release the false version of myself that I painstakingly built to survive what I was never meant to carry alone. I release the shame of this season, the confusion of this reversal, and every insidious lie that told me I was going backward, that I was failing. I receive the healing of my origin, the restoration of my divine blueprint. I receive the recovery of the version of me that God authored before any wound was ever placed upon me, before the world had a chance to imprint its limitations. I declare that the surgery is complete, the spiritual operation is finished, the wound is closing, and what God is rebuilding now is stronger, more resilient, more glorious than anything I constructed on my own foundations of pain and compromise. I am not falling apart. I am being made whole, piece by divine peace. I am not regressing. I am being recovered, my true self being unearthed and restored. And I step forward from this moment, not with hesitation, but with divine assurance, as the fully restored, fully healed, fully activated version of who God called me to be before the world had a chance to say otherwise. It is done. It is settled in the spiritual realm, and I walk in it now with renewed purpose and unshakable faith. If this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, a sacred resonance deep within your soul, leave a comment below with the word restored, and watch how God moves in your life this week, unlocking miracles and divine alignments. And share this with someone who is in the middle of their own reversal, feeling lost and disoriented, and needs to understand what God is doing inside of it to bring them hope and illuminate their path.